What's up everybody, welcome back to Double T Gaming. First off, thank you again for all the likes, comments, subscriptions, and the feedback on my previous videos. I really appreciate all the support. Today we're moving on to Druids for Project Epoch and Turtle WoW. And after this one, we're going to be moving into Rogues next, as that has also been a highly requested one. That means after today's breakdown though, we'll have just 4 classes left to cover, including Rogues. So if you've got suggestions or ideas for future videos, definitely drop them in the comments. I'm looking forward to scrolling through them. So let's go ahead and rewind back to vanilla and how Druids were then. And they were in an interesting spot, to say the least. Realistically, raids only really brought one Resto Druid, mainly because their healing over time spells did not stack with one another, so only one Druid could have rejuve or regrowth on the target at one time, and another Druid's Swiftmen could eat the other Druid's Hots, and it just turns into a whole debacle. Feral DPS was notoriously brutal to make actually work properly. You had to farm Gnomergan over and over just to stockpile multiple manual crowd pummelers, and of course this is a mace that has a limited number of on-use effects, and after you use them, it disappears. Plus, on top of that, a level 40 leather helmet was basically your BIS item. And then, of course, balanced druids or boomkins were kind of considered a total meme, save for 1 or 2 areas. And overall, feral tanks, I guess, were okay out of all the specs, but warrior was kind of superior in almost every single way outside of kind of downright damage mitigation. But like we've seen with other classes, both Epoch and Turtle WoW have reimagined or redirected the druid in their own ways, and that's what we're going to be diving into today. So let's go ahead and start with Project Epoch. Now, one note I always mention before going over Project Epoch is that they are using the TBC talent trees as their base, so I'll be primarily going over changes made from that tree rather than the vanilla tree. Also with Project Epoch, you get 61 talent points, with an extra point being given every few levels, so you can go into deeper combinations of specs that you never could in vanilla. So let's start with the infamous Balanced Druid, and there weren't really any major changes as to how this class is played in Project Epoch versus how it was played in TBC, at least on the surface. But to be fair, the way it was played in TBC is way better than the way it was played in vanilla, but they would still be considered to be on the lower side of DPS with the ability to off-heal while still offering good overall utility. Now, the only change on this tree that I could see from the base TBC talent set is the Dream State talent down near the bottom. Rather than it giving you 4% of intellect turned into mana regen while casting, it now gives you 5%. So just a slight buff to overall mana sustainability. And the capstone here is still going to be Force of Nature, which summons 3 Trents to attack enemy targets. I couldn't find it listed anywhere in the forums, but if I remember correctly in TBC, these Trents were kind of insane and hard to control and just kind of pulled things randomly. So hopefully that is reined in a bit on Project Epoch. So let's go ahead and jump over to the Feral tree, and I'll go ahead and note one baseline change for Epoch, and that is that weapons have been reworked to grant Feral attack power based on their DPS, making every weapon a viable option for cats or bears. This is going to show up as a little buff that only you can see as the druid. This is to ensure smoother scaling and adds more depth to gear choices for Feral players, letting them dip into more weapon options. Also, one more baseline change for Ferals is that they can finally take full advantage of on-hit weapon effects, letting them maximize their performance in PvE and PvP environments. So something like Crusader or Fiery Weapon can now actually proc if you're a Feral Druid. Screw it, I'll mention this too just because I've already talked about a couple other mainly baseline changes for Feral. The Wolf's Head helmet that I mentioned earlier no longer grants bonus energy or rage when shifting into cat or bear form. The Fury talent has been reworked, which we'll touch on in a little bit. This is simply just not to have druids be locked into one helmet the entire expansion. I think this is a pretty good change. Now in terms of actual changes to the Feral tree, the only noticeable one I could find here was with Leader of the Pack. In original TBC, this gave you and your party a 5% increased critical strike chance for ranged and melee attacks, while in Epoch, this has been changed to 2% for your party and an additional 3% for you. So focusing more on improving your own DPS to, I guess, catch up to the rest of the group. The capstone ability here is still mangled down at the bottom of the tree, which does initial damage as well as inflicting a bleed effect for both cat and bear form. Jumping into the Resto tree, I wasn't able to find firm confirmation whether or not Hot stack in Project Epoch. I believe this was first introduced in TBC, and with Epoch modeling most class dynamics off of TBC, including being on the Wrath client, I'm going to assume that Hots can stack. But if anyone can confirm that for me in the comments, that would be great. So the first change we have is to the Fury talent, as mentioned earlier. This now increases rage gained in bear form to 15 rage, and you also get 60 energy when swapping into cat form. This is up from 10 rage and 40 energy. Again, this is to have everyone move on from the Wolf's Head helm overall. There's also a new talent on the third row called Overgrowth. This is similar to future druid abilities in that it applies rank 3 rejuvenation to a target, as well as all of their party members. So this gives druids a bit better of an AoE healing option rather than spam clicking everyone and applying your hots. The rest of the Resto tree remains the same, with Tree of Life form still being the capstone ability. This provides an aura that increases healing received by 25% of your spirit to all party members, and reduces your movement speed by a bit, while limiting you to only certain spells being able to be cast, but also reduces the mana cost of those spells by 20%. So out of all these specs, in terms of on-paper talent changes, Resto seems to have gotten the most, albeit just an adjustment for Fury and the addition of the Overgrowth talent, which I think is still going to be a very useful ability. Now let's get back into the baseline changes for the Druid. In addition to the Feral attack power change, as well as the on-hit weapons being usable, Druids are now able to wield polearms in Project Epoch. Also, Druids no longer need to leave their shape-shifted form to use any type of consumable, a nice quality of life change. And it's also important to note that all effects in Project Epoch are raid-wide. So Gift of the Wild, Moonkin Aura, Leader of the Pack will now be applied fully to your raid. I'm hoping this doesn't limit the amount of Druids that you want to bring to your raid. You typically want one in each group to apply these buffs to certain classes, but them being raid-wide now may turn some folks off of them bringing a Druid if their DPS just isn't up to speed. Tiger's Fury has been buffed in that it still increases physical damage done for a short amount of time, but bleed damage causes the damage to be increased by an additional point, stacking up to 10 times, again focusing on overall DPS increase. Lifebloom has been added, acting the same way it does in TBC and being given a level 54. This is a healing over time effect that stacks up 3 times, and once dispelled or the duration ends, provides one large heal for the target. Revive has also been added. One of the most annoying and biggest weaknesses for Druids in overall vanilla was the fact that they did not have your traditional resurrect spell. So they're given their own res available at level 12, acting like any other res in the game. So overall, Project Epoch mainly followed the same style that Druids played within TBC in terms of talent treats, but there were some major quality of life improvements that Druids did not benefit from at all in vanilla, like the Wolf's Head changes, on-hit use effect, Feral attack power, in additions to being able to actually use polearms. I've personally always really enjoyed Druid. I even main a Boomkin in Mob Classic right now, but I've especially always enjoyed healing with tree form for some reason. But let me know in the comments how Druid plays at higher levels in Epoch. I might have to check one out. Let's go ahead and jump into Turtle WoW now and take a look at their changes. And one thing I do like about Turtle WoW is that they are keeping with the original vanilla idea of the class, but morphing it into a viable vanilla option, while Project Epoch is going down the proven TBC style. Again, both approaches are okay. TBC is known to work, and one is more of a vanilla twist. It's whatever you really prefer. But let's take a look at the Balance Druid. So right at the beginning, Improved Wrath has been buffed, so it now also reduces the global cooldown of Wrath, while still reducing the cast time, up to 5 talent points and up to 0.5 seconds in total. A new talent is also on this road called Sylvan's Blessing. This talent can have 2 points and gives you up to a 100% chance after killing a target that gives experience or honor to allow your mana to regen at a 100% rate while casting, lasting 15 seconds. So just something to help with overall balance mana issues and to keep the chain pulling going without having to stop and drink so much. Improved Entangling Roots has been replaced with the 3-point talents, Guidance of the Dream. This gives you up to a 70% chance to avoid interruption caused by damage while casting your balance spells, so another quality of life helper for balanced druids to avoid knockback. Improved Moonfire is now also just a 2-point talent that increases the damage and crit chance of Moonfire up to 10%. This was originally a 5-point talent with each level increasing by 2%. Natural Weapons has also been dropped from a 5-point talent down to a 3-point talent and reworked. This increases the damage you deal with physical attacks up to 10% in all forms, and also increases the chance to hit with melee attacks and spells up to 3%. Moon Fury has also been added. This is a 3-point talent that increases the damage of your Starfire, Moonfire, Hurricane, Insect Swarm, and Wrath spells up to 10%. Nature's Reach has also been reworked a bit to now include an increased range to Wrath, Entangling Roots, Fairy Fire, Moonfire, Starfire, Insect Swarm, Hurricane, Remove Curse, Abolish Poison, and Cure Poison spells up to 20%, with it being a 2-point talent. Moon Glow has the same effect as before, but has been moved up in the tree in the spot of Improved Starfire being moved down. Now Improved Starfire has been changed from a 5-point talent down to a 3-point talent. It reduces the cast time of Starfire up to 0.5 seconds, and it also gives it up to a 15% chance to stun the target for 3 seconds. Moonkin Form is no longer the capstone ability and has been moved up in the tree. In addition, it has been reworked to help with mana sustainability. So this still gives you 180% armor from items and provides a 3% spell crit buff, but this also now reduces the mana cost of your balance spells by 20%, as well as Innervate and Remove Curse has been added to the list of spells that a balanced druid can cast while in Moonkin form. In addition, Alkin Frenzy is a new talent linked to Moonkin form. This gives you a 10% chance to range while taking damage while in Moonkin, which grants a 30% chance to avoid interruption caused by damage while casting, as well as regenerating 1% of your maximum mana for 10 seconds. This can trigger once every 20 seconds if you're fully 3-point talented into it. Balance of all things has also been added. This gives your Insect Swarm spell up to a 30% chance to reduce the cast time of your next Starfire by 0.5 seconds, as well as giving your Moonfire spell up to a 30% chance to reduce the mana cost of your next Wrath by 50%, that being a 5-point talent. Gale Winds has also been added on this tier, which reduces the mana cost of Hurricane by up to 20%, while also causing it to reduce enemy attack speed by up to 25%, this being a 2-point talent. And finally, the capstone ability for Balanced Druid is Eclipse, something Druids get in future expansions, but has been reworked with a bit more of a vanilla twist. This aligns both natural and astral energies and causes your Wrath to have a 30% chance to grant Arcane Eclipse, which increases arcane damage dealt, and your Starfire a 50% chance to grant Nature Eclipse, increasing nature damage dealt. The damage bonus is 10% plus 60% of your spell crit chance, with each effect lasting 15 seconds and each having its own 30-second cooldown, and only one Eclipse can be active at a time. So this is almost like a light version of Eclipse from future expansions, where Wrath would boost your lunar energy and lunar spells like Moonfire would boost your solar energies, eventually sending you into one of the eclipses. But with this, there is no status bar, it's kind of just a percentage chance to proc. So if one procs off your Starfire, you swap to Wrath, and then vice versa during that damage buff. So that was a lot of changes. Basically, the entire balance tree was reworked in Turtle WoW, and honestly, it needed it. Balance and vanilla, save one or two talents you were almost forced to go into, like Omen of Clarity, were actually viable. Turtle WoW turned balance on its head and made it into its own unique caster DPS class. Let me know in the comments how balance is on Turtle WoW. The spec on paper seems like a blast. Now let's go ahead and jump into the Feral tree, which of course, like Epoch, is still going to be the combined tanking and DPS melee spec for Druids. That hasn't changed. Our first change is on the second row with the talent Open Wounds. This increases the damage of Rip by up to 15%, in addition to increasing the damage of Claw by up to 30% for each active bleed on the target. So just a straight damage cat talent here. Primal Fury has been moved up to the same tier as Feral Charge and reworked. This is still a 2-point talent, but now also affects cat form as well. So in addition to getting an additional 5 rage anytime you get a crit while in bear form, your crits from abilities that add combo points in cat form have up to a 100% chance to add an additional combo point. So this is again huge for cat DPS. This helps overall sustainability within fights and managing your combo points and spenders even better. Improved Shred now increases the damage done by Shred by up to 10%, in addition to reducing its energy cost, this still being a 2-point talent. Blood Frenzy on the same tier has been completely reworked. This now increases the duration of Tiger's Fury by up to 12 seconds, and causes Enrage to instantly generate up to 10 rage. In addition, Tiger's Fury and Enrage also increase your attack speed by up to 20% for 18 seconds. Again, huge talent for cat DPS, straight damage increase while also giving you instant rage for bear form. Berserk, which I believe is a spell from future expansions, has also been added into the Feral talent tree. This removes all fear effects as well as increases energy regeneration rate by 100% while in cat form, and your total health in bear form by 20%. So this is a much needed bear defensive cooldown similar to Last Stand from Warriors, with the added bonus of being a DPS cooldown for cats while also clearing any CC. Ancient Brutality has also been added. So dodging an attack while in bear form gives you a Spirits of the Ancients buff, generating up to 4 rage per second for 5 seconds, and this can only occur once every 9 seconds. And while in cat form, periodic ticks of your bleed effects restore up to 5 energy. Now I'm going to assume this is mainly beneficial for bears endgame. You shouldn't really be having the dodge attacks of your Feral DPS in a raid since you're not really the primary target. Carnage has also been added near the bottom of the tree, which causes your Maul, Swipe, and Savage Bite abilities to return 10% of their damage as healing to you, as well as giving your Ferocious Bite up to a 20% chance per combo point spent to refresh the active Rake and Rip effects and to add an additional combo point. So this is something that helps with overall sustainability for the Druid. And for the Capstone ability, it's still going to be Leader of the Pack, no changes were made there. But overall for Feral, tons of changes were made to help not only with bear survivability, but overall cat DPS, energy regeneration, combo point management. Hopefully this turned cat into a viable spec in raids on Turtle WoW. If you've raided on Nordinar, let me know in the comments how bears perform and where cats sit on the DPS charts. Again, on paper, this spec looks like it could be pretty fun. And finally, let's look at Resto, which Turtle WoW may have dipped a little bit more into TBC for. So our first change is on the second row with the removal of the Dumb and Rage talent that probably should have never been arrested to begin with. Subtlety has taken its place, which still reduces threat from spells. Swift Mend has been moved way up the tree and is no longer a capstone ability. It is now obtainable at level 20 at the earliest, with still the same effect. Genesis is a newly added 3-point talent. This increases the damage and healing of your periodic magical spells and effects by up to 15%. Improved Rejuvenation has been replaced with Tranquil Spirit. This reduces the mana cost of your Healing Touch, Regrowth, and Tranquility spells by up to 10%. Gift of Nature has also been moved up the tree a bit and has the same effect of increasing all healing spells by up to 10%. Asena's Bloom has also been added, taking Nature's Swiftness spot, as Swiftness has been moved over a bit. This reads that healing a target affected by Regrowth or Rejuvenation with Healing Touch reduces the cast time of your next Healing Touch by up to 0.3 seconds, and refunds up to 10% of its mana cost within 20 seconds, this being a 2-point talent. Preservation has also been added on this tier as well, increasing the periodic healing of Regrowth by up to 30% if the target is already affected by Rejuvenation, being a 3-point talent. Improved Tranquility has also been reworked to now increase overall healing by up to 40%. And finally, the Capstone ability has been changed to Tree of Life, behaving somewhat similar as to how it did in TBC, but reworked a bit. While in this form, armor contribution from items is increased by 180%, and the healing power of nearby party members is increased by an amount equal to 20% of your spirit, while reducing movement speed by 20%. Just like TBC, this also restricts you from casting any damaging spell as well as healing touch, but the mana cost of any healing over time spell is reduced by 20%. So just this new overall buff that Tree of Life gives to healing power would make sure you would want to put a Resto tree into the healing group in a raid. Now it is important to note that HOTS still do not stack in Turtle WoW, so although this buff is huge for healers, bringing more than one, especially with the fact that you can only cast HOTS while in this form, could cause some issues in the raid. Now let's go ahead and move into the baseline changes for Druids in Turtle WoW. To start off, Druids can also wield polearms, same as Project Epoch, and there's also been additions of Feral attack power to many more weapons in this iteration of the game, just giving the Druids some more weapon choices throughout. Druids will also now be able to undergo a challenging and expensive questline to learn the Swift Travel form. This form takes on a set appearance and has the same functionalities as any other epic mount, meaning it cannot be used in combat or indoors and grants a 100% movement speed bonus. This quest starts in Moonglade. So this is a cool Druid only type quest. I'm going to assume it's similar to their Swift Flight form in TBC. We also have changes to the infamous manual crowd pummeler as well as the revamped battery powered crowd pummeler, mainly to deter Druids from farming and use of it. These now increase swing speed by 20% instead of increasing attack speed by 50%, meaning the haste amount is reduced from 50 to 20%. And it no longer functions in shape-shifting forms, and the ability now has a 20-minute cooldown. The attack speed has also been increased from 2 to 2.9, while the DPS remains the same. Tranquility has been reworked greatly in Turtle WoW. They said they wanted to model this more off of the Warcraft 3 ability Tranquility. So the cooldown has been increased from 5 to 30 minutes. The mana cost is doubled, and it now ticks every second instead of every 2 seconds. The baseline threat is removed as well, as it is now healing the entire raid, not just your immediate party. And each rank increases the overall channel time of the spell up to 10 seconds. So a big nerf to one of the most notable Druid abilities from Vanilla WoW. I am curious to hear you guys' thoughts on how Tranquility plays now in Turtle WoW on that 30-minute CD. I imagine this has turned into the ultimate raid cooldown, especially if you're spec'd into it. Ferocious Bite has been given to Cat form at level 24, a combo point finisher from future expansions. This damage is based on the amount of combo points used on it, as well as any extra energy spent on the spell adding more damage. Combo points for cats also now do not disappear when you switch targets, but they will reset if you start applying them to another target. Regrowth's mana cost has been reduced by 20%, which just helps overall mana sustainability for all specs, and Hurricane has been reworked a bit to no longer increase time between attacks by default, remember this can be talented, as well as the cooldown reduced from 1 minute down to 30 seconds, with a slight spell power buff per tick as well. Swipe now scales with all ranks for a flat 8% of the Druid's attack power. Frenzied Regeneration's formula has been reworked, so that for all ranks, it will be converting 10 points of rage into health per second, with each point of rage equaling 6, 7, or 8% of your total stamina based on the rank of the spell, as well as the cooldown increased to 6 minutes. This used to give a flat 10, 20, or 30 health per point of rage in vanilla with a 3-minute CD. Same as Project Epoch, Druids can now also use consumables in cat and bear form. There is a new Feral Barkskin ability with 3 ranks in total and a 10-minute cooldown that lasts 12 seconds. This can be used in cat or bear form and reduces damage taken by up to 15 melee attacks by 50% while also reducing your movement speed by 20%. So adding in the defensive cooldown from future expansions, but reworked a bit. Moonfire's duration for rank 2 and higher has been increased to 18 seconds, getting off 2 extra ticks of damage. Similar to Insect Swarm, duration's up to 18 seconds for 3 extra ticks of damage. The Wrath base damage values and spell coefficient have been buffed by 5%, so just a straight damage increase for balance. Tiger's Fury has been buffed again. Damage bonus has been increased for rank 3 and 4 to 35 for rank 3 and 50 damage bonus for rank 4. Again, straight cat DPS increase. As well as all ranks of the Rake ability now scale 12% of their initial damage and 3% of their bleed effect with the Druid's attack power. And it's also important to remember there is a lot more Feral attack power sources in the game now. A new spell has been added at level 60 called Reshift. Basically, it's a spell that helps you with the power shifting dynamic that some Druids want to do. And this works alongside the Feral talent from Restoration, making it a lot easier. So this costs 35% of your base mana with the effect of canceling and reapplying your current shapeshift formed. There's also been another buff recently to Tiger's Fury to help those Druids who don't want to have to worry about their Feral talent or reshifting. So Tiger's Fury now also generates 10 energy every 3 seconds while active. And finally, a new passive spell has also been added that isn't mentioned in the Resto tree, but does require Tree of Life to use, called Efflorescence, which is a spell from future expansions, but this is reworked a bit. So anytime your regrowth or rejuvenation effects are about to be replaced, they instantly heal for a portion of the remaining duration. So based on the tooltip, I'm going to assume this is helping for those overlapping hots that might happen. Now actually finally, for rejuve and regrowth, the heal over time effects now heal every 2 seconds instead of every 3 seconds, and the total healing and healing power scaling remains roughly the same. Also, they reduced regrowth's duration from 21 seconds down to 20 seconds to match the new healing interval. Turtle WoW, I feel like, spent a lot of time on Druids, and honestly, they really needed it. In order to be a successful Druid in vanilla, you had to min-max to such a sweaty level, it really turned off the casual gamer. And if you weren't frame perfect power shifting to maximize energy gain as Cat, you would be doing the worst DPS, especially if you didn't farm Nomer for that mace. But Turtle WoW is trying to fight against that, not only leaning into power shifting, giving you an ability focused around it, but also giving multiple different ways to gain energy if you don't want to play that way. So it's a best of both worlds playstyle. But there you have it, that is how the Druid class is looking in both Project Epoch and Turtle WoW. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but they each took their own path with the class. But they also both offer very similar quality of life changes, with better itemizations and resource management improvements. Epoch still followed that TBC playstyle, but with some tweaks to try and help overall individual DPS or healing, while Turtle reimagined each spec to a more refined and perfected vanilla version. Both approaches work. Both should make the Druid way better than they were in the original vanilla WoW. But let me know in the comments how Druids play on both of these servers. Like I said, I main a Druid in MOP, and I main one for a bit in retail when I did play it a couple years back, so I'll always have a special place for Druids in my tier list of classes. Rogues are up next, followed by the Warlock, then Priest, then finally Paladin, and after we wrap that up, I really want to check out Bronzebeard's Classic Plus and see what the hype is all about. But thank you guys for watching. This is Double T Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next video.